All right, let's move forward and continue doing some more formatting. So one of the first things I think that I'd like to do, just so I can start to see some more stylistic similarities, is let's go ahead and take what we've done to this picture up in the top with the circle, and let's apply some other kinds of similar styling to other elements. So that there's consistency. First of all of these corners are very sharp edges, and because we have this rounded edge, then it would make a lot of sense to maybe slightly round some of these corners, as well as apply a kind of a similar drop shadow effect to some of these other elements like the banner and the articles and the footer and so on. So let's go back to our code, and what we can do is, first of all, if we don't remember, this is another really quick tip. If you don't remember where you styled something, like if let's say that your CSS file is a lot longer than the one that we currently have, what you can do is you can right click on something where you want to inspect and copy some elements styling, and you can look at it. All right, so this is the correctly selected image, and let's say that we really like this box shadow. I could either just copy this entire rule right here, like I could do this and put it in my clipboard with a Command C or a Control C, or the other thing that I could do as well is I could look to see where it's stored up in the line. But this is one of the things that I could do really quickly and simply. Now, one of the things that I will say is that if you were to click this where it says Style, one of the things that is problematic with, let me show you something. One of the things that's problematic with Chrome Inspector using this 127.0.0.1 live view is that it doesn't actually look at the real style sheet in the same way. So, but if you wanted to just look at how these styles were applied, you could do that. So anyway, I want to add it to the banner so that we see a drop shadow here with a border. I want to add it to the articles. So we can go and really quickly find that in our style sheet. So we're already at the articles right here. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to first of all add that same box shadow, right? I copied it straight out of the inspector, and then you can see here that it did apply that box shadow. So at least it's consistent now, so that all of my box shadows are going to be sort of consistently the same. And the other thing that I could do as well is add my border. So I'll add the border right above it. It doesn't really matter if you added it above or below, but just for, you know, I don't know, I like to do it that way sometimes. So I'm going to add the border so that it is, I think the other one was 3 pixels. So let's just see what that looks like. 3 pixels, and it was white, so we can say FFF, hexadecimal number, or we can add more Fs, right? That's fine too. And then we're going to say that it's a solid type instead of dotted, for instance. And then if we do that, you can see that it adds it, and then you can, if I stop selecting it over here, then you can actually kind of see what it looks like. And right now they look sort of like snapshots, kind of. They have this strong border. I want this edge to be a little bit round. So I can jump over here and I can add that as a border radius. All right. So if I wanted to, as I said before, you know, copy some of this stuff from that image, I could, but I don't want to add a 50% border radius to this because it wouldn't look good. I want to do this in pixels so that it's very, very slight. So I'm going to start to type border radius, and I can pick it from the list. And let's just say, well, let me show you what it would look like at 50%, right? It would start to look weird like this. All right, that doesn't, and then it does this other weird thing, like it's not consistent, it's not predictable. So anyway, what I'm going to do instead of a percentage is I am going to type, like, let's try 8 pixels, for instance, and make sure you terminate these things. It's really easy with this inspector live view, not inspector, with this brackets live preview, to forget to type the terminator because it'll go ahead and show you while you're typing. So make sure you're terminating these because the browser might not be so forgiving when you know, save out your real files. 8 pixels might be a little bit too heavy for me, so I might jump back over here and change it to 6. 6 might be a little bit better. And for me to stop seeing that little blue border, I'm going to click away from the article rule, and I can start to see it a little bit better. All right, and that might be all right. I think I'm okay with that. And then, you know, if I decide later that I want the spread to be a little bit bigger, actually, let's just see if we want the spread to be bigger or not. Let's jump over here. I might as well do this now if I'm going to be applying it to other things. So here we've got a spread, and so what I can do is I want to see if I change that spread. Let's do like 2 pixels and see if that is any better. And what it sort of does for me is it makes it a little bit more significant. Like up here, I could also do it up here, I guess, as well. If you don't want your shadow to be that strong, then you just can leave that spread off. It's really kind of up to you how you want to do it, but I think I might kind of like it and just leave it there. The other thing, if you wanted to, is you could muck around with this 0. I kind of like 0 because then it puts everything like a straight down light, but if you wanted to see what it looked like if you were to change this 0 for the x-axis, then you could do something. Let's try like 1 pixel, and you can see how it sort of puts it a little bit off to the side, right? It's a little heavier on this side because it's side to side for the x-axis. But I think I want mine to be consistent all the way down, so I'm going to change it back to 0. I just wanted to show you an example of how that would look. All right, so now that we have all that, what we can do is copy all of these rules that we just made for border, box shadow, and border radius. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to go up here to the, where is it, the area for the banner, okay? And let me get rid of this stuff that's commented out. And I'm going to go ahead and paste it. Now, the only thing that I don't like that it did over here, let's make this so that it fits on my screen, okay? We can kind of see what we're doing a little bit better. The only thing that I'm not really in love with is, actually, let's do this too. Let's close up the sidebar, and then that'll give us a little bit more viewing space. Excuse me, let's do this. It'll give us a little more viewing space here for our browser window. Let's do that. Okay, so the thing I was saying that I don't like is I don't like the border all the way around, and I don't like the rounded edges. But other than that, I think I do like the way that this border looks maybe at the bottom. So for banner, let's change this up a little bit. And for border radius, I'm actually going to just remove that entirely because it goes all the way to the edge and I don't want it to curve like that. All right. Now the other thing too that we need to do is for border, I don't want it to be a border all the way around. And remember, just saying border is simply shorthand. So it means it's a border for top, right, bottom, and left. So what I want to do is just make it border dash bottom. So I'm going to, and this is an instance where having longhand is really very correct. It's like the right thing to do. All right. And you can see how it changed it. So now it goes from edge to edge. It doesn't curve it or anything like that. And you can see that it looks nice up here. And then I would also want to do the same thing down here for my footer. So if I go up and I'm going to just copy where it says border bottom, I'm going to copy that and the box shadow. Remember, I took the border radius off. I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to scroll down to the footer section, which is at the bottom. And I'm going to paste that. All right, now, but the difference is that I just put a border bottom on the footer. Well, the border bottom isn't correct. I need border top. So I'm going to change border bottom to border top. And then it's effectively going to be just the same, but in reverse. All right, and so that looks a little bit nicer. And the one thing that you might notice is that the drop shadow is not as strong, and that could also be that we need to maybe increase the spread or even the pixel dimension so that the box shadow feels a little bit heavier. We don't want to make it too heavy because we don't want to make it look like it has a really different light source, but if we want it to be a little bit heavier, we could fool around with this a little bit just by increasing the spread, for instance, and that helps us see it a little bit better, right? So that's one option that you would have, and you can sort of fool around with that however you want. All right, now some other really obvious details are the fact that the text is really just not the right color. I think what we probably need to do is lighten the text up, and it's going to be a little tricky unless you want to make the text totally different. it's going to be a little bit tricky because this is a really dark background and this is a somewhat light background. It's not, it's sort of in the middle, kind of. It's not super dark, and it's not super light. All right, it's just sort of, I don't know, a normal medium green, I guess, with a little desaturation. So you need to kind of get these colors right. And if you want to use a basic same color for everything, for most everything on the page, then you can apply that color to the body and it'll cascade all the way through the entire page. The one example of where it won't be applied, however, would be in the links. So where it says about me, goals, and miss for miscellaneous, we should probably type that out as miscellaneous. Those you see are still blue and underlined. That's because they're links, they're A tags. And the browser will treat A tags differently than regular text. It wants to make it really obvious that those things are hyperlinks. So those, you'll see whenever we actually apply a color to the entire page, you'll see that these aren't going to change and we have to address those differently. But let's just go all the way up to our body rule in the CSS, and let's go ahead and just apply a color to the text. So to do that, for text color, it's just called color for the property. And for right now, we could just pick something, you know, like off this list if we wanted, or the other thing that we could do is come back over to our, let's jump over to our palette, and we could pick, let's just pick this color for our text since it's sort of the lightest color that's in the palette. It doesn't mean we have to stick with it, but let's just work with that for right now. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll come back to our live view. And you can see that now it's a lot more readable, especially up in the top. But I feel like it's a little orangey colored. I don't know. I think that it'd be nice if it had a little less saturation and maybe it was a bit brighter. And so one of the ways that, as I had mentioned to you before, that you could do it is you could either come here and you could adjust it, right? You could say quick edit. You could do it that way, or you could look in the inspector and fool around with it. So that's really up to you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to maybe make it a little bit lighter. So if I come over in this area, you know, it's not, this is full bright white, and I think that that's just not as attractive as having just a little bit of, just a tiny bit of saturation in the color. All right. So let's try somewhere in this area, and then if you wanted to make it, you could leave it in this same color range as your original palette color. You could also sort of play around with maybe getting it a little pinker, sort of so that it feels a little more like the background. And so I might sort of make it just a little bit lighter so it's not quite as saturated as the background. And I don't know, I might be okay with that. That's not too bad. And so I'll commit to that and I'll close this. And so now we have a color for the text that goes all the way through the entire page, which is fine. Now something else that you might want to do, if I were you, is I would probably consider making your headings a different color so they stand out. Forget about padding and margins and things like that, but you could also adjust those colors as well. So let's see how that's going to affect stuff. If I go over, well, first of all, let's think about the colors that we might want these. We might want to take something off of our color palette that's maybe somewhere in this bright green color and then adjust it. This might be a little too saturated. I don't know. Let's see. It might be too similar, but we can try it out. Okay, so let's copy that into the clipboard. And if I were to come over here and we look at our heading levels over here, our heading rules, where it says text styling, you know, one of the things that we could do is we could apply it to all the headings, but I have a feeling that that might be a little homogeneous. You know, we might want our headings, you know, to be a little bit different since they're going to be, some of them are going to be right next to each other. So for instance, if I were to say that this is heading level 1 where it says, hi, I'm so-and-so, welcome. And I, by the way, need to change this. I would need to have already changed this stuff to be my own information. So if I come in and go over here and make a new rule for like H1 that's going to be separate, and I'm not going to type anything, yet, but what I can also do is make another rule for like H2, and we can make another rule yet again for H3, and I think that's all we have. I don't think we have an H4 in here. Then we can create different color rules. For right now, let's leave the one up here alone in the banner for the H1, and let's just make H2 rules. So let's just say color, and then I'm going to paste that hexadecimal number that we had before, and then you can kind of see, let's click off of it so we can see it a little bit better. You can kind of see that it gets a little like nice and bright, and it stands out from this pinkish color a little bit. If you want to edit that though, we could make it a little bit brighter and maybe even in a slightly different value range. But let's also see, let's just copy this and let's put this also for the H3 so that these two things are the same. And then you can kind of see how if they're going to be near each other, and we will change the margins and stuff too, but if these are going to be near each other, you might want to differentiate a little bit between the two. Let's start with this H3 color. So I'm going to right click on this and go to quick edit, and let's just say that we want this to be maybe not in such a green area. Maybe for this we'll deviate a little bit from our color palette, and let's make it maybe a little bit more, just a little more yellow. So it's, I don't know, it's a little bit different. We could come in here and do something like this. And it's similar, but it's a little bit different. And I think I might kind of like that better. So I'll commit to that. And then now what I would like to probably do next is, if that's the color I'm going to use, somewhere in this range, I'd probably want to take this hexadecimal number, I want to copy that, and I want to paste it up here as a starting place. And the reason is that I want these two to sort of be in the general same ballpark, but maybe the top one will be a little bit lighter. So let's right click the H2, go to quick edit, and let's make this a little bit lighter, like I said before, so that it's nice and bright and it'll stand out a little bit more. And I don't know, that might be enough to make them sort of separate from each other, but that might be okay. And then we'll have to see once we start adding some other styling like margins and padding, and if we want to put a border or something underneath the H2s, you know, whatever. And I think that I would like to go ahead and see how my H1 would look. I don't know if I want it to be this yellow color or not. Let's just check it out and see what happens if we do make it this kind of yellow color. Let's copy that and add it there. Oops, we need to put a hashtag there for hexadecimal, and that might be all right. But I actually feel like then the aside sticks out even more, and so I think what I might like to do instead is we can also make the aside a little bit smaller, and I probably am not going to put something this long for the aside. Again, this is something you should have probably already done, but I think, you know, I'm going to make the H1 a little bit larger, but I think I'd also like to make this the really bright thing, and I could even maybe possibly make it like this white color. Let's see what that looks like as just straight stark white. All right, and that might actually, it might be the solution that we're looking for so that it really stands out, and then we could make it a little bit bigger. This might actually look kind of nice as a slightly yellow color, like from down here. So that is where we would have to add an aside, because you see that is in fact the aside if I select it in the HTML. So let's make something for the aside down in the CSS, and we can say color. And this is where I'd want to paste that hexadecimal number. And I might be okay with that. I don't know, we can just kind of see. And I think I'm going to take just a real brief second to update this file so that it actually has stuff that really and truly is kind of about me. So hang on. Okay, so I did, and you can already see that the different content somehow does actually help a little bit in being able to see the way that I really want to style this stuff. So like this actually, I think, is a good color combination, considering that I know that I'm going to make that larger. In fact, if I wanted to go ahead and do that, we could do that. So I'm going to go down here for the H1, and remember we already have a basis. For instance, we already have, let me look in here, our basis where we started our font size at about 90% or 0.9 em 1M would be 100% of the whatever the natural size would be, and it typically is about roughly equivalent to 16 pixels of the screen. It kind of depends on the font and stuff, but anyway, so it's going to be anything that we base it off of is going to be based off this original body size. So just know that. All right, so I'm going to come to this H1 and I'm going to create a different font size that's larger. So the actual property name is font-size, and that's longhand. I'm not going to be doing shorthand for font because it is a little bit more complex and very strict rule. And if you write it in the wrong order, then it can be tricky. So anyway, so font size, let's try like, if 100% is 1M, all right, let's try like 1.8M, for instance. And you can see that that gets a little bit bigger, and I think I kind of like that size. And then if we wanted to see about the H2s, I don't think that the H2s should be quite as large as the H1s. So, but we can make them a little bit smaller, but still bigger than the other stuff. So let's try like, I don't know, maybe 1.7M or something. That might be a little bit too big, so let's try maybe 1.6. I don't know. We could try some other size if we don't like it in combination with the H3, but I think that that might be a good starting place. And I'm just going to copy the rule, and we'll just change this for the H3. That's obviously way too big. I'm thinking like maybe 1.2, because it's still bigger than the font below it, or maybe even 1.3. So it's also going to depend. This size is going to depend a little bit based on the margins and stuff. You can also do decimals, so I could say 1.25. I could even say down to a third decimal place, you know, if I wanted. But 1.25 is going to definitely render properly on any browser, whereas the third decimal might not on some. So that might be maybe a good starting place. And now in the next video, we can start to deal with like how to get rid of or how to inset with margins and change the margins on these heading levels and other things, and get this formatted in the bottom, and also figuring out how to deal with link colors and getting these list items to be in a horizontal row.